You wake up and there is no school waiting for you, no classroom, no desks, no homework. No adult ever sits you down and says, "Today you will learn how to survive." And yet, for roughly 300,000 years, children grew into capable adults without a single report card. That sounds impossible today. How could a child learn anything important without formal education? Your modern brain is surrounded by schedules, grades, and institutions. It is easy to assume that learning requires all three. But for most of human history, education was not something separate from life. Education was life. Every meal was a lesson. Every walk was a lesson. Every mistake could become a lesson that might one day save your life. Anthropologists who study hunter-gatherer societies have repeatedly noticed something surprising. Children are often given far more freedom than modern children. Not less, more. Richard Lee's famous work among the Zhuangzi people of southern Africa documented communities where children spend much of their day exploring, playing, observing, and participating in daily life. These groups are not living fossils from the past, but they can offer clues about ways humans learned before schools existed. The strange part is that this freedom did not produce chaos. It produced competence. Why? Because ancient children were never truly separated from the world they needed to understand. Imagine a typical morning tens of thousands of years ago. You wake near a fire that has burned through the night. Adults are already moving around camp. Someone is preparing food. Someone is repairing a tool. Someone else is discussing where animals were seen yesterday. Nobody gathers the children into a classroom. Nobody announces the start of a lesson. Yet learning has already begun. You watch. You listen. You imitate. Human beings are extraordinary imitators. Your brain evolved to copy successful behavior from others. Long before children could read books, they could study people. A child watching an expert tracker notice broken grass learns something. A child watching a skilled toolmaker shape stone learns something. A child listening to stories around a fire learns something too. Knowledge entered through observation long before it entered through textbooks. James Sussman, who has written extensively about hunter-gatherer societies, describes how learning often emerged naturally from participation in everyday life. Children were not isolated from important activities. They were surrounded by them. This matters more than it might seem. Think about how many modern jobs are invisible to children. Software engineering, accounting, corporate management. A child rarely sees these activities happening. But in a prehistoric camp, almost everything necessary for survival happened in plain sight. Food gathering was visible. Tool making was visible. Child care was visible. Conflict resolution was visible. The entire economy of life unfolded directly in front of young eyes. What better classroom could there be? Play was another powerful teacher. Today, play is often treated as a break from learning. For ancient children, play was learning. A group of children throwing sticks might look like they are simply having fun. In reality, they may be developing coordination needed for hunting. Children climbing trees may be learning balance. Children pretending to track animals may be practicing observation. Children inventing social games may be rehearsing the cooperation they will need as adults. The anthropologist Peter Gray has argued that play functions as nature's education system. Through play, children voluntarily practice skills they will later need in real life. This pattern appears again and again across cultures. Nobody needed to force children to practice. Curiosity did most of the work. Your ancestors were born into a world full of mysteries. Which plants were edible? Which animals were dangerous? Where could water be found? How could fire be maintained? Questions were everywhere, and the curiosity pulled children toward answers. Of course, observation and play were only part of the story. Stories mattered too. In many ancient societies, stories served as libraries. There were no printed books. There were no online databases. Memory had to travel from one generation to the next through words. A story about a foolish hunter could contain lessons about risk. A story about a dangerous river could preserve survival information. A story about ancestors might teach values, identity, and social rules. Polly Weisner's research on storytelling among hunter-gatherers found that evening conversations often focused on social information, cooperation, and shared cultural knowledge. Stories were entertainment, but they were also education. Children listening beside a fire were absorbing far more than they realized. And unlike a lecture, stories are difficult to forget. Your brain remembers narratives because narratives create emotional connections. Ancient people understood this long before neuroscience existed. There was another advantage to growing up without schools. Learning happened at the moment it was needed. Imagine trying to teach a child about animal tracks from a worksheet. Now imagine teaching the same lesson while standing beside fresh tracks in the dirt. Which lesson would be remembered more clearly? Context matters. Ancient children often learned skills in the environments where those skills actually mattered. Knowledge was tied directly to experience. You did not learn about rivers from a diagram. You learned while standing near a river. You did not learn about weather from a textbook chapter. You learned while feeling the weather on your skin. This kind of learning can be remarkably effective because the brain connects information to real situations. Mistakes were important too. Modern childhood is often heavily supervised. Ancient childhood appears to have involved more opportunities for controlled risk. Children climbed. They explored. They wandered. They tested boundaries. That sounds dangerous. Sometimes it was. But small risks help children learn how to handle larger ones later. A child who learns how to navigate unfamiliar terrain develops confidence. A child who learns what happens after a poor decision gains judgment. Many researchers believe humans evolved in environments where gradual exposure to risk was an essential part of development. Without risk, some forms of learning simply cannot occur. This does not mean ancient childhood was easy. Far from it. Many children face disease, injury, hunger, and loss. Infant mortality was often much higher than it is today. Life could be harsh, but hardship itself became a teacher. Children learned resilience because resilience was necessary. They learned patience because survival often required patience. They learned cooperation because isolated individuals rarely succeeded for long. One of the most surprising features of hunter-gatherer societies is how much childcare was shared. Today, parents are often expected to carry most of the burden alone. In many traditional societies, care came from grandparents, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, and unrelated community members. Anthropologists sometimes call this cooperative breeding. In simple terms, it means many people help raise children. Humans are unusual in this regard. Compared with many other animals, we rely heavily on social support. A child growing up in such an environment gains access to many teachers rather than just one or two. Different adults possess different knowledge. Different adults model different behaviors. The result is a rich network of learning opportunities. This may help explain why humans became such effective cultural learners. Knowledge did not depend on one person. It belonged to the group. Archaeological evidence also suggests that knowledge accumulated across generations. Consider places like Chauvet Cave in France. The remarkable cave art found there demonstrates extraordinary skill and symbolic thinking. These abilities did not appear overnight. Someone had to teach techniques. Someone had to pass on traditions. Someone had to explain meanings. The same is true at Blombos Cave in South Africa, where evidence of symbolic behavior appears tens of thousands of years ago. Such achievements required cultural transmission. In other words, teaching, not classroom teaching, human teaching, the kind woven directly into daily life. There is a common assumption that education began when schools appeared. History suggests something different. Schools transformed education. They did not invent it. Long before classrooms existed, human beings had already become masters of learning. Otherwise, civilization could never have emerged. Otherwise, language could never have survived. Otherwise, technology could never have improved from one generation to the next. Every tool, every story, every skill depended on successful learning, and successful learning depended on children. Now consider a counterintuitive possibility. Ancient children may have enjoyed more autonomy than many modern children. That does not mean they knew more mathematics. It does not mean they understood modern science. But they often exercised greater control over their daily activities. Research in several hunter-gatherer societies has found that children frequently direct much of their own play and exploration. This freedom may have helped them develop independence earlier than many children today. Could something valuable be hidden in that difference? Perhaps. Modern education has accomplished extraordinary things. Literacy rates have soared. Scientific knowledge has expanded. Opportunities have increased. Schools are powerful tools. But ancient childhood reminds us that learning is bigger than schooling. Your brain did not evolve for classrooms alone. It evolved for observation, for curiosity, for imitation, for experimentation, for storytelling, for participation in a community. Those ancient learning systems still exist inside you. Even today, some of your most important lessons probably did not come from formal instruction. You learned friendships by having friends. You learned trust by trusting people. You learned disappointment by experiencing disappointment. You learned confidence by doing difficult things. The deepest lessons often arrive through life itself. That truth stretches back across thousands of generations. So let us return to the beginning. You wake up, and there is no school waiting for you. For most of human history, that was not a problem, because the entire world was already a classroom.